Yeah, so I apologise if the lighting is quite bad, but I'm quite proud of this. So the joys of being in the city. I mean, anything at all affects you, and it is kind of like a Neo in the Matrix type experience. Because if anything is a problem, your nervous system just doesn't respond. Compared to Birmingham, you've had 42 years of just being attacked. Anything now that comes at you just wings off and you immediately back up. But I was sitting, I can't even remember where I was sitting and responding to Helen, because the history of this is. In 2020, we're doing effectively counter ops from my masonet in Birmingham. So we get Helen on a sort of crackling Chinese telephone then. And her advice is teach the course in Birmingham. And that's the step where we catch Scriven. So she says, well, you're going to teach this course to your colleagues. I'm saying to her on this phone, well, you're not really getting it, Helen. The situation is kind of iffy. And she doesn't actually get the job and she's not really interested. But because we had a conversation, we go and attempt to teach her a course, of course, in the sense that we're sort of catching, we're catching, catching assistant directors and the whole kerfuffle, changing the whistleblowing procedure, all this kind of stuff. But of course, the counterweight just dropped their clients effectively. They dumped us off somewhere. The unions all dumped us off. You would think that given the nature of the job, there should have been a proactive back and forth, but they didn't. Now, in some sense, okay, that was quite good. So because they all buggered off, I could think it through, get the good observations, record stuff, and just get the hell out of there with their laptop. And maybe we wouldn't have had to do that or we would have been less successful if Helen had actually come in. But this is just the end of 6 years of failure from organisations like this. So it was a total failure of an organisation. Okay, we had some basic pushback. There was never any proper accounting, as far as I'm aware, to what happened to these people. People like Hart, that stuff being removed from the organisations, serves effectively by an apology, that kind of stuff. Never any follow-up. But you can thank Helen for being a co-author of Cynical Theories in 2020. Getting that stuff out was a huge help to us. Effectively, sort of the Rosetta Stone in the court service. But in terms of running an organisation, I certainly wouldn't criticise Elon Musk given this kind of behaviour. But in terms of the clinical literature, this is why I love this place, because you can come back and look at your clinical psychotherapy manual just lying around the place. There's one next to my bed on child abuse, terror, fleeing political persecution, all sorts of stuff. So that's casually lying around my flat to read, because that's my job. You'd have to actually talk to people or be educated to talk to them. But this is a great one as well. So I highly recommend this to anyone. Go and read John Bradshaw. General shame is good if you've done something wrong. So if you actually have caused a genuine problem via your shameful actions, then you should feel shame quite rightfully. But if you've been the straight guy for, for 17 years in the career, the family have been the straight guy for combined God knows how long in that city, if you're going to behave like this, and we're just not going to take this seriously anymore. The good bit about being a Brummie is there is no other city on earth that can turn you into this kind of person. Once you do get out, the low-level mooks just are nothing, and feeling any kind of shame for dealing with the kind of corruption that's in that public body is certainly not on my list. So coming into 2026, we can just carry the work on. But no, of the original grievance studies hoaxes, I'm afraid the British have been the most disappointing. And I can see our American cousins being disappointed with us. Rufo is taking back universities, whereas Kaufman is still, I think, pecking around the edges and has to. But it's the absurdity of the whole situation. So if the commissioners are begging for powers, what was the point of sending them in? And Burnham, of course, isn't going to do that, is he? So there's that one. So you've got this absurd situation where the postmodernist government is doing these kind of parades around. The compliant press are pretending that the people getting serious about constitutional reform and governance are these sort of ignorant grugs who can't discuss policy, this kind of stuff. Whereas these are your supposedly serious thinkers. But it's not just the thinkers, it's the ethics. So Birmingham was a sort of ethics thunderdome where you had to apply the law regardless of what you felt about it. But obviously just that we couldn't apply the law anymore because of the total breakdown and violence. So liberalism in Birmingham, I'm afraid, has failed. You can't actually go to Birmingham and discuss the place. You have to get physically out of Birmingham and, again, psychologically healthy to do it. That's the whole point. You can't discuss things when you're going to be violently assaulted. But the people who were supposedly at the time the expert and helping me at the time, buggered off. So it was cynical theories plus Clausewitz, plus Parvini's work and that kind of stuff, which helped us really get a lot of evidence and to catch a lot of these people. So the current situation is you've got this compliance department just full of recalcitrant bureaucrats. They're all implicated by silence, effectively, in a British legal sense. Helen would have been able to work this out if she'd gotten legal representatives in, because she hasn't. We're now all these years on, and the personal cost is still being borne entirely by me and the remains of our family. But again, what caught my eye as well, if you actually go and look at this particular thread, so she's using just a Foucauldian tactics, same as Bermondsey Council. So the correct inference again is, to legally possess one of these, you've got to pass a psychosis screening. So they want to call it that. They're not going to say this is your 3-monthly or 6-monthly psychosis screening, but that's what it is. The doctor is assessing you for function. One of the potential side effects is psychosis, which is a condition where you think you're all powerful and almighty and all-knowing, but you're just making logical statements. No, we are from a criminal law family and a military family. I am huge. I am quite sharp, because you have to be to actually run the organisation in that sense, in that environment. So I've taken your work on board. Your conclusions are, in many cases, very useful and helpful. But in terms of organisational running, you were a complete and utter disaster. I mean, it was a golden opportunity too. They could have gone in with the commissioners, sorted the place out, gone into CIPD if there'd been any kind of back and forth. We could have kept pushing into various arms of the British states. But again, it's easy to retreat to the shires and write things, isn't it? You can accuse me of that if you like as well. I'm sure many of my colleagues will. But for the record, again, this is entirely self-directed. The help from Birmingham has been next to nothing. From November till now, the entire project was pretty much solo, because the intellectual capability of the people around me and their level of honesty and the number of criminals and the breakdown in police standards and the political collections and the personal health back in November and etc. etc. But again, this woman can make all sorts of very, very strange claims without a great deal of evidence, having just by simple logic failed Birmingham. So there's a mix of everyone on both sides. You've got to, after she suggested we withdraw all that time ago, we could have gone back again. But at that point, if people on your side are saying withdraw, you've kind of got to. But because withdraw turned into disbanding the organisation, handing it off to the kids and not doing any follow-up, you've then got this absurd and frightening position where it's all very one you clever pat on the head, then you're saying, no, these obviously have serious little implications for the entire organisation. You're in the court office, so legal compliance. What are we going to say in court when challenged on quote unquote anti-racism, when this has been compared by people like McWhorter to thalidomide and Lysenkoism, and the managing director is abusing corporate communications yet again after several years of doing it, and telling them to stop and getting access to the guy who does it, and working out why he's doing it and that kind of stuff. But you realise as well it is just the level of intelligence. So people have you coming at them. So you come at them through a computer. You're too sharp, you're too incisive, you pick apart their arguments, the sort of the deflections just don't work, you go straight through and you get this kind of behaviour with the technology. So this is just a mirror of Birmingham. These women get criticism, can't respond, and that's, oh, you're naughty, and this kind of stuff. But this is why, I forget who said it, on the yeah, that was it. On the in terms of the war, so he was saying, well, if you go into a building, you shoot the women first, and he was saying, well, because if you leave them, they will just lash out of spite as they're going down, effectively. So you can watch this sort of happening biologically in the modern world. You've got supposedly serious writers, again, opining on liberalism itself. You think about the shoulders you have to stand on to do that kind of stuff in a professional context. And then you've got this kind of stuff. It's quite incredible. But yeah, the counter is again Ruffo. So if you go and read David Gilbourne's recent edition of Critical Race Theory Introduction, it basically says just don't go and look at Ruffo. So Ruffo, of course, is a better strategist and just says, well, create a lot of noise in an organisation, then you can do Thousand Flowers in reverse effect and get the main activists out because they want money, this kind of stuff. So if you're intelligent, you can clear out organisations very quickly. But this was our sort of alternative to counterweight in 2020, but because of the failure and the then political situation, because of course this impacts upon people's votes, what's been happening in Birmingham has been hidden up because of the non-follow-up. So again, you think of the time cost and this kind of stuff to the incursions, all that kind of stuff. So the inference is just sort of spread out as soon as you sit down to think about it at all. But again, the supposedly serious things in Britain are carrying on in this manner. But I will defer, I think, to our American cousins who, with their, it's because of the guns, I think, because they have their naturally stiffer back, they can get away with the strongest criticism as long as they know they are strong and ethical themselves. Whereas in Britain, because of the sort of more Weasley, fox and lion based tradition, you still get this kind of stuff. Yes, but an interesting evening regardless, as the our day stuff falls apart. But the other inference as well is these people should always just been arrested. And Helen's work and Lindsay's work just shows entryism. These people are effectively hostile and should have been treated like Deobandi Islam or whatever the anti-British strain is and removed. But because of course CRT is the biological lynch point. It's the primate trigger stuff. That's the spear point for the whole project. So getting that kind of stuff out in Birmingham was the baseline. Then you can get the organisation back. Could make this inference several years later, but again, no assistance to do that. But anyway, to finish that off, so yes, after ranting for 13 minutes, I'm very proud of being able to get back to my flat and casually pump this out. After 6 years, I've earned it. And people who won't account properly for what they did during the previous siege of Birmingham can account for it. And to any of my critics following this who may criticise me, in Scotland, women are slightly different. They're more straightforward and don't actually hide. It's not a run hide kind of place. So in Scotland, being respectful is enforced by your reputation still in many places, which is partly why I'm here, not in England. Helen, of course, is welcome to join David Fern and the managing director and various other people in St Giles to enjoy the Sunday service and discuss my apparent psychosis. But again, in terms of any serious matters, I mean, the British legal system has broken down since. Again, I can't at the moment get a solicitor who can start to untangle any matter at all. Again, criminal, family, health, medical, anything you got. I just need an honest lawyer. Helen could give me a refund, but she can't get me that.